This is how we get at the secret sauce that makes people so good at their job. Okay? So we've discovered that there are about 20 questions. There's 8 of them here, and I'd be happy to send you the other 20 if you just shoot me a note. There are 8 examples of these 20 questions here. Now, what we know is that experts can answer all 20 questions with, here, wait for it, the right answer. Okay? So experts, the guy I marked purple, the person who's setting the standard, when they answer the question, they're giving us the right answer. And we know that anybody else who gives us a different answer, it has the wrong answer or an insufficient set of answers. And so that's very black and white and makes people uncomfortable. No, there's all these nuances. There's all, it's true. There's lots of if and then and what about situations. But what we know to be true in the most pragmatic sense that I can possibly give you is that experts can answer these questions with the right answer and everybody else is a wannabe, right? So why don't we frame the wisdom in those questions and then let the experts teach to the test, let the apprentices answer the test questions as a way of proving that they're learning. Okay, let's go through a few of the questions. Some of the questions are obvious, like the procedural questions that we really have to have, the stuff that shows up in your procedure, shows up on your qual card. What are the steps in the process and why do they matter? That's one that probably everybody better be able to answer or we're gonna have a trouble. Another one that belongs up here, right, 1.5 would be vocabulary. What are the 20 acronyms or terms you have to know to be able to even play in the space of that silo? Question 2 says, what are the most common mistakes new people make when they do a walk down, or when they meet with the craft people for the first time, or when they host an IMPO inspection? What are the most common mistakes I've seen newbies make? And the expert will say, oh, let me tell you. I usually buy them beer when they're answering question number 2 because it usually gets the stories flowing and they can be really, really helpful. Who do you have to talk to get this done, and why are they so important? So that's a political question. And it speaks to the fact that most of us get stuff done through other people. And you can really screw that up, right? If you circumvent the wrong person, if you approach the right person in the wrong way, you can really get to that. So speaking to the political issue, how do you know when you're in over your head? So you have mentors or apprentices who go at this both ways. One way is they're chicken little and they're worried all the time and they're really afraid. So they think they're in over their head all the time when they're not. And the other opposite is even more common. They think they're fine when they're not, and there's an issue here. So we want them to know what are circumstances under which I might be over my head and how will I know it? That's a great thing for an expert to teach their apprentice. How do you escalate once you are in over your head? Should I tweet about it? Should I send a text message? Should I yell at the top of my lungs? Right? Is email good enough? So what is the way that one escalates? Now, we know how to do that when there's a fire, right? But do we know how to do that when we personally feel the fire? And that's a great thing for people to talk about. And they'll say things like, I have 2 phones I carry. One is the one I ignore and the other one I answer. And so when you need to escalate, you know, that's the way to get to me. And so they'll talk about this a little bit. What are the rules you can follow and which ones can you ignore? And that should cause a shudder in the entire industry, right? Because of course we don't have any rules we can ignore, true? Right, exactly. So we need our experts to be able to talk about the rules that, in that book of rules that's 3 inches thick, page 27 is the ones, that's the stuff that we're really worried about. You got to follow all the rules, but these are the ones that you're going to be audited against. These are the ones you're going to be most concerned about. These are the ones that have the greatest safety implications. So really speaking to that so that there's a highlighter that goes through the rule book and says, pay attention here. How do you know if your work is good enough? It's just a quality question. What do you look for, listen for, feel, and smell? Other questions include things like history, things like what's the normal versus abnormal state. You can go on and on. Several questions around safety. I like to have people, the best question I find for safety is, tell me how to blow off safety for this particular situation. And I get apprentices to learn how to ignore safety. Because I find that if I teach them how to ignore safety, they realize they're not so clever. They're not the first person who thought you could do that. And so they have a much better opportunity to actually follow safety procedures than being harped about on what is safety. We teach them what is not safety. Much more interesting, frankly. Okay, so the idea behind this is really straightforward. I say, on Monday, you didn't know how to write a requirements document. And I know that because when I asked you 1, 2, 3, and 5 questions, you had terrible answers. So by Friday, I want you to be able to answer the test questions and sound like your mentor. If you can't do that, you're fired. Okay? Just like that. It's that straightforward. You're saying, here's the problem. The problem is you can't answer any of these questions. When you do answer them, you don't sound like your mentor. You've been here 10 years and you still don't sound like her. So we need you to sound like her, and then we need you to act like her. That's the measure of success. That's the difference between what you have and what you need to be. So as a leader, I can walk up with that clear goal, and I can put a date on it, and I can measure it, and then I can say, let's rock and roll. Now, I also expect not only for you to be able to pass the test, but you have to work like you just passed the test. That's the rest of the story that, of course, still has to happen. But now you can't say I didn't know, or you can't act like you didn't know, because you definitely know what's expected. And so much of the problems I find for people is they don't know what you want. And there is no doubt by the time you get done here exactly what you want.